Good afternoon, Kalispera. This is a presentation based on a paper by myself, Karina Kafiris, and Ivoni. We are founders of the Radical Institute, and our paper today is about how the Radical Institute is engaged in developing sustainable social ecological practices.
So this paper then explores issues drawn from Murray Bookchin's vision of the ecological and democratic transformation of society through a new form of politics by presenting some of the work being developed by ourselves within the Radical Institute. So within this presentation, we'll just go through very briefly some of the programs. And also, I suppose it's important to mention that we're a transnational initiative, but I'm based in Cork and Karini is based in Athens. And also that the Radical Institute is part of a broader scheme that is again based in Cork City in Ireland called the Living Commons, and it's a broader social ecological scheme. And we currently have a space in the Cork City Centre.
So before we get started, we'll just do a brief overview about Murray Bookchin's vision, because this is crucial to our work. So Bookchin has talked about the ecological and democratic transformation of society through a new form of politics. And this new form of politics is based on participation in direct democratic popular assemblies and institutions, which are rooted in community self-governance at different independent levels, and they come together in confederations of eco-communities. It's through this form of living politics that the domination and hierarchies of capitalism can be challenged, and that collective power can be used to construct a communalist society based on equality and freedom.
And just to reflect on some of Bookchin's descriptions of how social ecological organizational structures of equality might be configured. Radical Institute is particularly interested in how the processes of reasoning play out through decision making. So for example, Bookchin's description or conception of communalism as the overarching political category most suitable to encompass the fully thought out and systemic views of social ecology. He describes communalism as it seeks to recapture the meaning of politics in its broadest, most emancipatory sense, to fulfill the historic potential of the municipality as the development arena of mind and discourse, a free society based on a shared common humanity, freed of domination as well as material exploitation, indeed recreated as a rational arena for human creativity in all spheres of life. The municipality becomes the ethical space then for the good life. Communalism expresses an abiding concept and practice of political life formed by a dialectic of social development and reason. And again, we are particularly concerned within our programs within that last, the dialectic of social development and reason, and how that plays out in process.
So our focus is what kinds of practices and processes are necessary. So this is kind of the main focus of the Radical Institute. How can Bookchin's vision become a reality within direct democratic popular assemblies and institutions, the ones he referred to in his work? So what kinds of practices and processes are necessary to mitigate against abuses of power based on hierarchy and domination within the assemblies and institutions? What kinds of practices and processes are necessary to challenge the domination and hierarchies of capitalism as they play out at every level of politics? And what kinds of practices and processes are necessary to make communalism a reality? So Radical Institute explores how arts and cultural practices can actually address and answer these questions. So we look at how through the arts and cultural practices, we can promote and sustain radical and social ecological change. And we often through our programs, or not often, actually through every program, we explore and develop how sustainable organizing and collaboration, how those practices and processes that most interest us can come together to work to create a culture of care. And so our definition of cultural care is radical, it's feminist, it's political. And we suggest that a culture of care is exactly what's needed to mitigate against the abuses of power that Bookchin described. It's necessary to support participation, transform social relations, and to make the lived politics that he writes about a reality. We do this through many different ways, but largely at the moment through workshops, mentoring, collaborative, cultural, interactive projects, trainings, culture and art production, and research.
So what kinds of understandings then, skills and engagements are needed for citizens to sustain full and equal participation in deliberations and decision-making, particularly in the current, how we are currently facing enormous challenges. And the big issue for us, and this is one of the big issues that's really kind of overlooked at the moment, and in our understanding and our experience, is the cause for most of the kind of failure of such sort of collective and assembly work. So we then work collectively with others through art and culture to try and make visible the organizational processes and practices which reproduce invisible oppressions and hierarchies in groups, especially those based on gender. Collectively build organizational cultures of care, which are radical, deeply political, feminist, and ecosystemic, and cultivate the social ecological subject. So what we mean when we talk about making the invisible visible is that we, again, work with others within the very sort of idiosyncratic and specific contexts of particular collectives or assembly groups. And we together explore organizational processes and practice, which then can make visible the reproduction of these invisible oppressions and hierarchies within those groups. These two slides show some of the kind of issues that I think would be familiar to most of us who have been part of any kind of collective group. It might be a bit difficult to see them on the slide there, but just to read out some. So some of the issues that have already arisen are an insincere attempt at addressing issues, patriarchal power, changes made without the consultation of others, no space given for expression of needs, etc. So these are the type of issues we're exploring with groups at the moment.
So we've already mentioned that our work has at its core the building of radical feminist political cultures of care. And as we said before, we think this is necessary so that Murray Bookchin's vision can become a reality, a lived reality. So we draw from feminist writing to posit that care is in fact not a selfish, indulgent practice. Care is in fact collective. Care can only be collective, the kind of care we're interested in. This kind of care takes into consideration that individuals have multifaceted needs, because those needs deal, or rather emerge from their multifaceted nature. Groups, collectives, and communities also have multifaceted needs. So in our work, we explore, acknowledge, and address what these different needs are. And based on that kind of acknowledging and exploration, we then use that to build solidarity into our everyday practices.
So this is just to give you an example of one of the projects, the programs that we're involved in at the moment. It's in collaboration with a Cork-based arts organisation and funded by the Community Foundation of Ireland for Ireland, and it's called Studios of Sanctuary. It offers 4 marginalised artists who are interested in working within socially engaged practice, 15-month mentorship and training residencies. So again, without going through everything there that's within our program, just to give you an idea that again, our focus very much is within the kind of subjectivity of the artists themselves, then also with how we engage with communities around us, and what those kind of processes, what sort of processes are involved within specific contexts. So you can see there at the top of the slide, part 1. So the first couple of months is very much a personal focus on the artist, where we work again collaboratively with the artists themselves on creating workshops that look at the interrelationships between self and others. We look at power relations, identity, multiple ways of knowing, as well as then involve them within trainings and workshops on self-care, according to the sustainable activist approach.
Again, at the core of what we do throughout all the different kind of aspects of our work is an effort to cultivate the social ecological subject. So in keeping with Bookchin, throughout our projects and our work, we keep in mind, and that is reflected in the actual way that the projects are set out, that individuals are not just minds. Individuals are conceptualized holistically as human beings with minds, emotions, and bodies. They exist and interact within overlapping systems of relations, including power relations.
So just to return briefly then to Bookchin's thinking on where the social ecological subject might situate themselves, the main concerns of Radical Institute always remain within the processes of how the connection with others is being rationalized within non-oppressive modes of communication. So for example, as Bookchin describes social ecology as a coherent vision of social development that for decades argued that we must reorder social relations so that humanity can live in a protective balance with the natural world. And in short, social ecology favors management plans and regulations formulated democratically by popular assemblies, not freewheeling forms of behavior that have their origin in individual eccentricities.
What we mean when we talk about cultures of care in relation to our work, again, we'd like to stress the point, is that the kind of care that we are interested in is deeply political, radical, and feminist. It's often misunderstood, which is why we're stressing it. So it's only through this kind of organizational cultures of care that we believe that, or we suggest that the Live Politics Bookchin has outlined can be embodied and sustained for true radical ecological and political change.
So again, just to finish up then and go very briefly through some of the existing programs or the ongoing programs that we're involved in Cork. Within the Living Commons space. This slide indicates some of the workshops that we're involved in within our PADIA program, which is a program where young people can become engaged in social ecological approaches to citizenship through collaborative creative programs. And the images you see there are ongoing collaborations with Hungarian artist Esther Nemethy's Magical School and Cork-based Steve Granger's New School program. And this slide indicates the new steering group that we're setting up in Cork City, again, around the Living Commons space, where we are trying to conceive a community land trust, the like of which you can already find in England and Europe, but has only become legally possible in Ireland this year. So again, we're doing that by working collaboratively with existing groups, such as the Irish Regenerative Land Trust, and we collaborate with other artists, youth workers, and young people to connect the social ecological practices to specific focuses on community-led housing and biodiversity. And this is, again, a really nice project that's ongoing where we invite different groups of teenagers into the space and ask them, there's a great need for a dignified space for teenagers in Cork, particularly indoor spaces because of the weather. And again, it's where they can become involved with the idea of running an autonomous space within their own assembly processes. And finally, this is a project, again, it was funded by the Irish Arts Council, which is a reconfigurable assembly structure. It's this mobile structures that basically are offered to different groups and collectives to use. So that concludes, as you can hear, that our alarm just went off. So that's our literally our 15 minutes. Thank you for watching our presentation. And should you have any questions, apologies that we can't be there in person or to answer any questions right now. But should you have any questions, if you follow the link here, you can get in touch with us through the website. Okay, thanks again. And thanks to Yavar and Joanna and everybody at Trise for inviting us to speak.
Thank you.